We're back. We're
We're
rolling.
back.
We are back. It's another week of Stand Up Explained. I am one of your hosts, Brant Tobler.
I'm Andrew Slater.
And first of all, we want to just say thanks to everybody who has subscribed, rated, review. Our numbers keep going up, and that's all because of you guys. Thank you so much for doing this. I know we're having a good time. I look forward to talking comedy and talking with Andrew every week. So it's been fun, and it just spreads through word of mouth. So all we ask, we'll keep doing these for free and trying to help young comics. But if you can, just tell a friend, tell another comic, tell somebody who wants to be a comic. And we'll just keep hopefully spreading the word because it's a lot of fun. And it's better than a comedy class.
Yeah.
It's free.
It is free. It is totally free.
And I'll say that up front because I think this episode will probably get the most watches, listens of all episodes, because I know it was a question I asked over and over and over and over starting out. And that is, when should I get an agent and a manager? Because I'm going to be famous, and what is the world waiting for?
It's such a funny question. When should you get one?
Yeah.
Like, as if anyone's ever held off, like when approached, because when you whoever first approaches you, you're like, oh my God, an agent, you're like, no, I don't think I'm ready for this yet.
Yeah.
Come talk to me in a few years.
Yeah. I remember, I still have like business cards, and I remember I was so obsessed with it because I thought for sure it would change my life. And like TJ from Gersh he booked a lot of the guys that came to Vegas, and I got to meet him. And then he I probably shouldn't say this, but whatever. But then we connected because he was like trying to bet. And then I would get to talk to him, but he never wanted to talk to me about comedy. He would talk about sports. And I would tell him like who to bet or whatnot. And then I'd be like, I'm doing good at comedy, and didn't give a shit. But I kept his business
like,
card.
Hey, do you want to if you want to take a real long shot?
Yeah. If you really want to gamble on something, I'm right here.
I will give you 50-1 odds. No, but it's okay. So that's a great one because TJ is like a club. You book comics in clubs, like,
yeah.
Because first of all, there is a difference between managers and agents. And
yeah, we should start with that.
Then there's like agents are very specialized. It may be your dream to like be in TV shows and stuff. So then you're like, oh, I need a theatrical agent, or commercial agent to be in commercials, or there's college agents to work colleges, and there's cruise ship agents. And so agents are like super specialized. And that the one you were talking about, TJ, I believe he's like a booking agent,
Yeah, he's a booking agent.
You in clubs, basically. But the idea that he's going to really change your life is backwards, I think. Because you got to put yourself in his shoes, right? Like, he's not just waving a wand and getting you booked at the Improv in Tempe, right? Because if he uses all his muscle and goes, Brant is going to be headlining the Tempe Improv, and then the Tempe Improv has you, and they have like 500 seats or whatever, and nobody shows up, then they're gonna be like, what are you doing? We can't have this guy. You know what I mean? Like, so ultimately, yes, booking agents help and agents help in general, but you have to be able to deliver in every way, right? Like, whether it's selling tickets, doing a good job, all this stuff. And the club will want you more than the agent wants to get you there. There's a few ways. So there's like a little bit of, sometimes it does help if you have the agent, they can kind of muscle you into a place you might not otherwise be, because they also represent other comics that club wants. There's a little bit of that, but there's very little room for that.
Yeah.
What you should really be focused on is just like getting yourself to a point where the club really wants you,
Yeah. Well, that was my favorite advice I got in LA is managers and agents, but just LA in general. They're like that. You just have to figure out how to make untalented people money.
Yeah.
And that's what really, because most of the agents and managers I met wanted to be comics at some point, and then they just realized, I'll just make money instead of grind this out. But it's such a, so the first time I had a management was Steve Hofstetter was starting a management company way back when. And I remember we had it. I think I was with him. It was called Next Round Entertainment. And and in his defense, I wasn't trying very hard either, but he also wasn't trying very hard because it was just like what you said. I couldn't really make him any money. And for
Right.
me, when I remember when I went to LA, so you get to LA that first week and everything, it's crazy. So I took a couple meetings with like I went to Gersh and I went somewhere else. But what I realized is they just didn't give a shit about me because I couldn't do anything for them. I sat down at a meeting and I was like, hey, they're like, hey, how are you? And and I said good, and they're like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a stand-up. I'm a really good stand-up. I just moved here from Vegas. And they're like, okay, but what else do you do? And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a comedian. And they're like, yeah, but like, what else do you do? And I realized in that moment, oh, I have to do other stuff to really have an agent manager that could make them money, which, over time I wrote a book and then you start screenwriting, you do stuff. But like for me, I wasn't ready for any of that. I thought, oh, I've got
Right.
like a good 45 minutes. Someone needs to be my agent, which couldn't have been further from the truth.
When I had this vision of like, once I get an agent, then I'm on easy street. Then it's like, oh, if I could just get an agent, right? Then they'll just book me at colleges and clubs. And even if it was like, this was early on, and it was like, even if it was just featuring, they could just put me in like 30 clubs a year featuring, you know?
Yeah.
But then it's an insane idea. Cause first of all, an agent can't get you 30 weeks even featuring at
Mm-hmm.
clubs, because clubs are going to be like, no clubs are booking features that way anymore. And it doesn't make them any money. Nobody's making money. And by the way, the agent's not making any money. What are they making?
Yeah.
You commission on your $400 or whatever? Like, no, it's like, they're not focused on that, So that's that. I thought colleges, oh, they're just going to book me at colleges all year and I'll be fine if I just get a college agent. It's like, no, you still have to go and do these showcases and kill, and then stand there and shake hands, and hopefully they'll book you at like, and then the agent is important to get you in that position, but it's ultimately on you. And I think no matter where you are in your career, and if you can look at whoever you want, anybody as high up as you want to go, and they're still hustling at the rate that they hustled to get where they are.
Yeah.
And it's kind of depressing to think about if you're lazy like me, but like even like Conan O'Brien or something, right? Like you think, oh, he's done. All he has to do is show up to a show and be funny. It's like, no, I mean, this dude, he's starting podcasts. He's doing
He's
shows
hitting the
all over the
road.
country. He's like, how do I reinvent this? How do I, you think his agent, he's just waiting for his agent to get him the podcast gig? It's like, no, he's like, I got to go start that. It's like, he's presenting all these ideas to his management and his people. And so it's like this, as a lazy person like I am, I always thought like an agent or a manager was just going to do all this other stuff for me, and it just could not be further. Those people do not exist. There is
Yeah.
no magic booking fairy that's just going to take care of your booking problems, and all you have to do is write jokes and show up. Like, I wish that were true. It might be true for some small percentage of people, but I think for most people that is not the case.
Well, here's another problem we ran into when we had agents was most of okay, our agents would occasionally get us stuff, but most of the time we were still booking the stuff on our own. And then our
Yeah.
agents would want a piece of what we booked
Right.
on our own. My agent would be like, hey, I might send you out in March. I'd be like, oh, I booked a gig here. And then they'd send me a bill for that week. Like they didn't even do any of it.
Right. And you have to decide when so then you get like, and then like there's management, right? Who management would want to take like a piece of everything that you do for a year or in the year, and then they're kind of in charge of like managing the entire ordeal. And you really have to get to a point where you decide, is this person making me money or costing me money? And it's a hard decision to make. But I'm sure there's some managers out there who make and earn every dime that they make, and very beneficial for all their clients. But what I would say is, just because they're good doesn't mean that the clients that they have aren't also still busting their ass just as hard as before they had the manager.
Yeah. Well,
And managers want people who already have demonstrated they can make themselves popular and make money on their own. They're not going to go, oh, here's this unmotivated genius, who's very funny but doesn't seem that interested in the career part of it. That is not someone who's appealing to
Yeah.
the
So most of
business.
the successful managers I know are kind of more like secretaries even. They just kind of filter, they just give the comic a break from the requests, so
Well, and
you
they
just,
can be the bad guy sometimes, like an
yeah,
agent.
well that's
Sometimes you
that's
need a bad guy.
the perfect, like for us, especially me personally, I'm bad at saying no because I love stand up. I'll always
Right.
say no, I'll take your first initial price. I suck at all of it. Whereas like the managers I know that are successful, or the successful comics that I know that have good managers, they just filter everything through their manager. Hey, anytime they get us something, send it to the manager. And like you said, then the manager can be a dickhead. And then, that's to me, the best part of having a manager would just be to not be the bad guy. But I don't think like, it's not like a rock band where I know a couple comics where their manager, I guess, just books their flights and hotel, but there's just really not much. I think most of the time you're just giving away money, like you said. Most of the people, you don't even really need a manager anymore.
Well, I mean, it's definitely an interesting question, and like, there's obviously tiers to comedy. There's like actual celebrity comics and with high-powered managers that are getting them photo shoots and GQ and stuff, and like that's like a whole nother world that you can listen to another podcast to hear about because I know nothing about, But as far as just like a good working road comic, yeah, there isn't a lot for a manager to do that you can't do yourself. And when I had to like break up with a manager and agents a few times, and one of the speeches I gave when I did it, I was like, hey, and I wasn't making them, they weren't like devastated, I wasn't making them a ton of money anyway. It was one of the speeches I had to give was like, look, I have like laziness in my nature, and when I have you out there, I'm just assuming you're running down every lead and you're getting me every writing packet and you're getting me every booking opportunity, and that if I'm not getting stuff, it's just because they passed. That's the way my brain works. And what I need to be doing is assuming that I need to get all that stuff on my own, because that's the only way I know for sure that I'm getting every opportunity is if I'm running down those opportunities myself, right?
Which you
So,
did need to do, right?
which I needed to do. I
He wasn't
absolutely
really,
needed to
he
do.
wasn't bringing you anything.
And it wasn't. And it was easier for me, though, to put myself in that headspace knowing there wasn't any agent or manager out there doing it for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I definitely, because I remember when I got mine, I was like, oh, this is easy street. They'll just send me offers. And then I
Right.
never.
I know. So I think that's the misconception. A lot of people without agents and managers, they think if I just had an agent, they would book me and I would never have to ask anybody to be on their show again. I mean, I was so naive. I thought like a manager would get me on like hot showcase shows in LA and stuff. And booking agents do that for their clients, if they like them enough and make them enough money, they will. Like, you'll talk to LA show producers and they'll be like, yeah, I get booking requests from like their agent, and for the show that pays like $40, but that doesn't mean that they're going to get booked more often because an agent is asking on your behalf, and the agent's not going to want to do that. Even if they are
Yeah.
willing to do it, do you think they're following up? Do you think they're, do you think they're not I don't know. I just think like at no point does this ever become like easy.
Yeah.
There's always going to be so sounds so stupid, but the grind of it is going to be real. I think the entire time. And like,
Yeah.
if your thinking is like, I just want to get to a point where they take care of all that booking stuff and all I have to do is show up and tell jokes and go home. It's like, I don't know if that exists. I don't, maybe there's some people that exist for it. I would love to hear from them. I have not found it to be true.
I mean, I think it's such a small level though. Like, I mean, just like the top of like
Yeah.
Rogan or somebody, or like those guys, like Segura.
But Rogan, nobody works harder than Rogan.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what
I
I'm
mean,
saying.
he's like grinding out he does like 50 hours of podcasts a week or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, I mean,
no, you definitely, it's a misconception. And you know what? I think maybe it's just an outdated thing. So maybe back when the internet and everything wasn't as powerful, and then you had a manager that had all the contacts and he had a Rolodex, but you could get to anybody now on your own in 10 seconds, you know? So maybe let's say early 80s, who knows the booker at the Cleveland Improv, oh, this manager has it on speed dial because they've worked for 10 years. But I could send a message to the Cleveland Improv or get a referral we talked about in other episodes. To me, I think I think agents and managers are a dying breed anyway. And I think this pandemic is really hurting them because I think people are starting to realize you don't need them as much, or you don't need them at all, really.
Well, so just to get back to like this episode, right? So someone could probably be listening to this and go, yeah, but I still want an agent, or I still want like the specific agent. I want a booking agent. I want a college agent. It's like, how do you get one, you know? And I would say the number one way you get one is they want to book you. You know, they want, you've already demonstrated the ability, like you said, to make them money, and they will seek you out. You know, every time. I think festivals, sure, you know, there's usually industry there. They might see you and think you're very talented, so do a lot of festivals. You know, I would say for college agents, you know, video is by far the number one way. Like, and find the one that you really want and send them video and.
Well, now a college agent is much more needed, don't you think? A college agent has,
because the college market is so it's so like insular and tightly controlled, you know, and the money's good, so it's very, you know, organized, and everybody knows everybody. It's a very small world, the college market. So yeah, I think there's no real way to do colleges without college agent unless you're like severely undercutting on budget. You don't really want to be doing that. So that, I think, you know, but you're right, for comedy clubs, I don't know, like a booking agent, that's where, when you're talking about like it going away, I could see, I'm sure a lot of these comics with big podcasts and stuff who are getting 10 grand for a weekend, some comic club, they've got to be wondering like, did I really need my agent to figure this out?
Yeah. Why would you? If I'm, let's say I'm Mark Norman or somebody, and I call Comedy Works and say, hey, I'd like to come this week or that week. And, you know, he sold out every show he was here last time. What are they going to say? They're going to say, yeah, okay. And what do you need an agent for at all? I really don't.
I mean, I guess if you think the deal is going to get complicated, or like, you know, you're worried about getting ripped off, or, I mean, there is stuff that goes into it, especially when the money goes up and stuff. But
well, I think you already nailed it, is what the advice we've been given, and we might as well get it over with because it's the advice you're always going to get. When you are ready for a manager and agent, they'll come find you. You don't really need to go find it.
And that's true. But then I do want the caveat, like, if you feel like you're really ready and that hasn't happened, there are ways to like increase your odds of them finding you, you know, like doing better shows. So for instance, like, you could go, well, I don't care about doing that, some fun, like whatever the show is in town, the hot show in LA or New York or whatever. You're like, whatever, I get enough stage time here, I'm just gonna keep my head down. Like, if you want to get noticed, you got to do those shows where everybody knows about it, and that's where industry,
that's where they hang out. Yeah.
Or that's where the festivals can be important, right? If you're worried about not being noticed, like, well, then do some festivals, get noticed, you know. I think that is the number one way I've found representation is festivals, for sure. And it's not a high rate. Like, it's not like every time I do a festival, I have like 10 new people who want to like work with me. It's, but every time it has happened, it's usually a festival.
Yeah. And you know, another way that I think maybe people think, and I don't know, maybe it's just me personally, but like referral never worked.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
I don't know if that, maybe I just worked with.
Why is that? That is true. I found that to be true as well. And I think it's because people refer too many of their friends. And so agents have just learned to not pay attention to that.
Well, I think it might be that, but also I think if like I have an agent and you don't, I think in a weird way, a lot of people are like, well, shit, if I refer Andrew, then he might get some of the gigs that I would get. So I'm just going to, because I opened for guys for a long time, and their managers would come and they would never even snip. Well, I mean, maybe I just wasn't good enough, but There was never in this business where there's a lot of referrals and stuff we've talked about. I'll tell you, the agent management one is something that's never been offered or rarely even talked about. If that's, I don't even know if that's really a thing. I mean, I'm sure it's possible.
You don't hear about it a lot. Like, and I also think part of it is that agents and managers have pride in like the scouting a little bit. So usually they want you because they saw you live, because they want to be able to tell like the story. Like, it's like,
yeah,
you know, a romantic idea or whatever. Be like, oh, I saw Richard Pryor at the Comedy Store in 1970, whatever, you know, and like I plucked him out, and they want to be able to say like they saw you when, and then worked with you, and now you're this big star. Like, I think that's part of it. They want like the ownership of it. And
well, that just reminded me of so many LA days though, is that they don't want you until one of them wants you, and then they all want you.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of our friends are like, man, no one would even look at me, and then this one person decided I was hot, and then I could have signed with any agency I wanted because it was like the hot girl thing or something. And once everybody wanted them, then everybody, yeah. So all of it is, to me, well, I just don't know. Everything I've ever done, I've done for myself. Like you, like if you look over my shoulder right here, there's a poster of a 60 city tour, but I did that all by myself. You know,
Right.
I just did that on my own. And to get an agent to do something like that for me would have been, I made more money doing it myself. I had more, I just really think I know when you're starting, you think you want an agent or manager. It was always cool to say, hey man, I have an agent or a manager,
Right.
but I don't know if really how much it didn't do much for me at all.
I think this is the way I would put it. It's like, it's not a silver bullet, you know. It's not going to be what decides whether you make it in comedy or not, is whether you have an agent or manager, or even a good agent or manager, you know. It really isn't. Like, the you're going to make them a good agent or manager, you know, by how hard you work and what you produce and how funny you get, all that stuff. And like, I think about that too. There have been things that I got that like you could say like, oh, your agent got you that or whatever, but it's not even that true. Like, you still got it. I still got it. You know,
Yeah.
I may have gotten it with them or without them or
Well,
whatever.
you got an email
They
to
got
go
an
somewhere.
email. They got an email. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and then you don't even know. Sometimes you don't even know. Like, I mean, it can get kind of shady out there, but I've had things where like they find me on the internet, on my website or YouTube, and so I just have my representation listed on the website. So then they go, oh, they email your representation, and then your representation emails you and goes, hey, I got you this great gig. Are you interested? You know? And then you're like, okay, they're earning their money, except for the fact that if they didn't exist, they just would have emailed you directly, and it would have been just one step simpler, you know? So sometimes I never liked when agents would present it as if just, you know, and I've had it the other way too, where agents are very honest, like, hey, this person emailed me, they found me on your website, whatever. And they just want you. Cause like sometimes agents try to make it like, oh, they came to me looking for a comic. I thought of you, you know? So it's a game sometimes or whatever, but it's not, it may become necessary to have an agent for certain markets and also.
Well, I think a college agent for sure. I think there's still value in a college agent. I've never had 100%.
One. Yeah.
But I think if you
want to work colleges,
if you want to work colleges, if you really want to, that's the agent. I would say, hey man, try to get a college agent. As far as a booking agent, they'll come get you once you build the fan base, like we always talked about. And the more you build your fan base, you might not need them. And then, but I mean, we might as well tell our story. So Andrew and I, we'd go on hikes every day. We talk about this every day, and we both had agents and managers we didn't really think were doing much for us because we were their smallest clients, and they just really didn't do shit. So we made a decision that one of our best friends is a tall, handsome, charming guy from New York, fast talker, that would just be cast as an agent. So after hours of negotiation, me and Andrew like pitched to our friend, hey, will you be our manager? And he said, I can't be your manager. I didn't go to manager school. We go, there isn't a fucking manager school. We just believe in you and you believe in us.
We'll
Will you
just
be our
skip the part
manager?
where you get people coffee for 2 years and then become a manager.
Yeah,
Like,
there's
you just don't have to do that part.
yeah, you can just be anybody could be a manager, and we definitely needed it. I know part of my initial pitch was I'm just bad at being the bad guy. I just wanted someone to respond to emails and try to get me more money. Because I know I've talked about it on here before that Michael Costa one time said, if you have a manager, you should ask the club owner, hey, what do you think of my manager? And if the club owner's like, oh, he's great, you should fucking fire him. And if he says, oh, your manager is like, he's all right, then he's pretty good. But if the club owner's like, oh, I don't like your manager, you're like, oh, that's a good manager. But that might be a little extreme. But so we reached out to our buddy and we said, hey, will you manage us? And we were fortunate because he didn't have a big roster. He just took us on as me and Andrew as his clients. And within the first 5 months of him being our manager, he got what you got on what last comics you got Conan.
Yeah.
He got Andrew on Conan. He got Andrew on the cruise ships. He got me a clothing deal with Surf Wyoming. Let me represent here. He got me on Comedy Central's This Is Not Happening. He did it all, but he wasn't even technically a manager.
But
he just did it.
Right. And you say like he did it, right? But it's
we
like,
well,
but that's the thing. And even if he had been like worked for a long time management company, like, you know, CAA or Gersh or whatever agent, it still wouldn't have been them that got you those things, right? What we needed was someone who we could just know, just 100% transparency. Like, we know what he's doing, he knows what we're doing, total trust, and that we could just go, okay, hey, I want to submit this tape for Conan. Here's what I want you to say, and I want you to say it, and when. And he was good, and he was very charming, and he got to know all these bookers and stuff. So he did a good job and all that too. But it was very helpful to be able to just go, let's send this tomorrow, and have some control over it.
Well, yeah, that's the key. I shouldn't have said he did it. We did it together with him, but we knew he was working for us because, like you said, we had more control of if we would have sent to our managers or agents, our old ones, they'd have been like, okay, I'll get to it whenever. Whereas Ryan, we said, hey, we want you to send this. This is the guy. We're going here. We need you. And part of it was he's got balls. And then we'd say, hey, that's right there. That's JP Buck. He runs Conan. He walk over and say, hey, start talking to him. And
right. And he has balls, and he also was not intimidated by these people because he didn't care.
Yeah.
It's like he worked in TV and stuff, but it wasn't like this arena that like was so like, we put these people up on pedestals, and we think they're so important. And to him, he's like, oh, this guy, he's just a regular person with a regular job. He's not some.
Well, that's a perfect story. Because the first time we were hanging out with JP Buck, he didn't even know. Remember, we left Rory's birthday party and we were like, that was JP Buck right behind us. He books Conan, and we were freaking out because no one talked to us.
Right.
And Ryan's like, why didn't you just go talk to him? Well, we were like, that's JP Buck. He books Conan. We can't just go talk to him.
Right.
And now Ryan talked to him. Ryan was in his bachelor party and shit.
So crazy. but that's just to illustrate the point that, and I do think too, like, so then in lots of other instances, we've, used him as like our, like you said, hey, this gig wants you or whatever, and it's high money. We kind of use, sometimes it is helpful to have somebody representing you. There's this extra air of professionalism and stuff. I don't know. It can help. But again, it just shows you also how little you actually need from them, other than the go between part of it.
I mean, because there's legendary stories about comics getting their own PO box and being their own manager, and that's essentially what we did. But I will say there is something good about, it's probably why you guys are watching this episode. You want to say you have a manager, and I definitely think it does help. The biggest benefit for me has always been I could ask questions I really wanted to ask by just disguising them under him. Hey, can you do this gig for $400? In my head, I'm like, that's like $1,000 gig. Hey, let me see what my manager says. Then I could have Ryan do it, or I could be like, my manager, and I could always get what I wanted or get the answers to what I wanted without having to be the bad guy. And then, and it was also just good for him to always be there to answer. It just takes an email.
Yeah. And, so I think it both points out why you want or might want a manager, and it also shows why it's not even that
Yeah.
important, and the important parts of it, and how silly some of the reasons are of why it's important. It's just all this like high school level human nature sort of,
Yeah.
we want it because everybody wants it sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And
But if you,
but that's real. That's real
yeah.
too. So
Well, it's funny. It seems like every episode there's a few things that we always come back to, and then that this is another thing on every episode. It's like you want it to just be the funniest will get booked, and that's how it works. But it just, I mean,
yeah.
every episode we go down and think is like, oh, it would make sense if they just always pick the funniest people, and that's how it worked. But it doesn't.
No.
It is. It is
But
sometimes.
bottom line, it's like what you said. This whole episode could have just been that quote, right? Find
What?
a way to make untalented people money.
That's my.
And
That's
if you really want an agent or manager, then what you have to do is imagine sitting down in a room and telling somebody how 10 or 20% of whatever it is you're doing is going to be worth it to them.
Yeah. Well, it's exactly right. If I could go back in time to the first meeting I took in LA, I would sit down and go, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write this book. I think this book could be a one-man show. I think it could be sold for a movie. I think we could do this. I would have left the stand-up part out of it. And I would have said,
because they know you're a stand-up. Everybody's yeah.
But then I would have said, and from the success of this book, and then if it turns into a movie, or if I do a one-man show, I think that will help me build a fan base. That'll help me sell tickets on the road. I would have said less about how funny I am and more about how much money I was going to make them. And I think I would have I'd have a way different meeting now. I would do so many things different.
Every general meeting I've ever had, we just talked about fantasy football the whole time.
Yeah.
It's a complete waste of time.
Well, that's the thing. We might as well explain that. So when you get to LA or New York or wherever, then these agencies will call you in for a general meeting and they just go in and you just talk to them. It is just a complete waste of time. But maybe, I guess, if I would have took generals, if I would have went into those generals and said, hey, generally, I'm going to make you more money than you have in your pocket right now.
Right.
Let's not talk about fantasy football. I'll help you win your fantasy football league, but this is how I'm going to make you money. But that will always be the best advice I think I got about LA is you just got to make untalented people money.
And if you're like, man, I need an agent or manager, how am I going to do that? How am I going to get one? Figure out how you're going to make them money first, and then you'll find, I think you'll find that it's pretty easy to get one, and it's like, but then again, so if people are looking for like practical, actual advice, like if I didn't have a college agent, how would I get one? Well, I'd get a really good tape, right? I would send it to the college agent. I would ask people, I would look at their rosters.
Yeah.
This is what I literally did. I looked at the rosters of every college agency. Then I looked at who was showing up a lot at these college conferences, right? And I was like, okay, this agency has a bunch of comics. Seems like at every one, and it looks like somebody I could be funny like them, or like they seem to represent people who have my kind of humor or whatever. And then I would send them an email, with my tape, and they got ignored. They all got ignored, but I didn't just send them an email. Then I was like trying to do festivals and stuff. So then you're backing it up, right? So you have the email and the tape. They may have seen it. They might have replied like, hey, sure, we're not really adding people right now, but thanks or whatever. But then when they see you at the festival, then like that's the second, and then you follow up again. And then that's how I ultimately got a college agent. But in that instance, it did help at that time. I had a manager who wasn't Ryan, it was my older manager, and it kind of helped. It kind of helped to have another person, and then it like raises in their mind. It raises your value. So, but I don't know. I would just hustle for it. But like ultimately, if you want representation, like you got to make it worth it for them, and that's that's kind of how you have
the college agent saw you at the festival and realized, oh, this kid can make me some money.
Right. And what makes a college agent money? Like you being able to work clean enough and be funny enough for an hour. I mean, so that's like a different equation than what makes like a manager money ultimately, but for them, that's what they're looking for. And someone who's not going to get in trouble on the road. I mean, those are like three big ones.
We'll do a whole college episode soon about booking and shows and everything, because that's a whole nother animal. All right, we'll wrap up with this. well, I got one question. We'll see if you remember what our manager taught us. The one rule that we'll share with you guys. This is the only thing I remember from LA, and I don't know if you'll remember it, but Ryan always said this. If
I'm
you
so
go to a
nervous.
meeting, there's one rule.
Oh, get the water.
Get the water. They're going to ask
If someone
you.
offers you a water, just always say yes.
Always say yes. If we could leave you with anything on this episode, if when you take a meeting with the agent manager or anybody and they offer a water, always take the water.
Sparkling. Go upsell it. Always go like, yeah, sparkling. And then they'll freak out. Oh, we don't have a sparkling water. They'll send their assistant out across the street. You know what I mean?
He would always say that.
Because
always.
what is my instinct, right? Andrew from Seattle. Oh, no. Oh, I'm good. Oh, I'm fine. I'm good. No, thank you. You know, they don't want that. No, you want the water.
Yeah.
Sparkling ice. Thank you.
Yeah. Anytime I took a meeting, because I was the same way. I just always want to be so nice and like just no. I want to be low maintenance my whole life. So I'd always be like, oh no, I'm good. And then that shit would just ring in my head. Like, you want water? I'd be like, no, yeah. You know what? Let me get that water. And then I was just like, if we'll learn anything from this, always take the water.
Take the water.
But that's it for this week. Like we said, hopefully, I think the manager agent will find you when you're ready. But I think festivals is the best way to wrap it up. And I mean, you could shoot your shot if you think. But I would definitely. I mean, you can cold call, email these agents. But I think I would of course.
If you're gonna do that, like if you're gonna call or email or send tapes directly to managers and agents, then you definitely need the plan, like what we were talking about. Like,
yeah,
you need to have a strong pitch, right?
Yeah. Remember, you got to make them money. So if you can do that, and that might get their attention, because I think so many people were like a young Brent or Andrew that's just like, hey, I'm a really funny comic. I want this golden ticket that we all thought. But if I was an agent, you'd at least get my attention. If I just play agent for a second, I would say, okay, here he is. Okay, his tape's good. And then if you just said, this is what I plan to do, these are my goals, this is how I think we together could accomplish something, that would be, you know, and you probably are ready for an agent. If you have a 4 or 5 bullet points where you're like, we can do this, and this together, that's how I think we can gain success and gain money. But I just wasn't ready at that time. But if I had to do it now, I think I actually could. But I would definitely, map out that plan of what we're going to accomplish together as a team and why really you're going to make them money. So that's it. Anything? You got anything?
No, I'm going to go make someone give me a water.
Yeah. So let's get a water.
Can I get a
all
water?
Right. That's it. That's it for this week. Please subscribe, rate, and review if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe, and please, if you can, just tell a friend. I'm sure if you're in comedy or thinking about comedy, you talk comedy a lot and people are always asking you questions. Please direct them to this podcast and we'll keep it growing. Word of mouth is how this shit grows. So we'd appreciate if you tell a few people. But that is it for this week. If you have anything you want us to talk about, drop it in the comments. Andrew's about to make a 15-hour trip back home to Portland.
Yeah.
Well, drive safe, buddy.
Back.
Have a safe trip back.
Yeah.
We love you guys. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
See you.